racing is for sure the high highs and the low lows. Look at the specs in every car racing here. This car is currently one of the lightest cars in the field, even though visually you'd say it's one of the biggest cars here. I'm Andrew Slavens. I'm the team principal of Gradient Racing. We're here tonight at IMSA's Petit Le Mans in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is our Ford Mustang GT3. The Ford Mustang GT3 starts life as a production Ford Mustang tub off of the assembly line in Michigan. And it's transformed into the GT3 race car that we operate by Multimatic, who is Ford's partner in the production of the car. So the engine in these cars is actually very close to the standard Coyote engine. Most of the refinements to it are in the cam drive. There's a lot of development in the valve train, but really the block, the rotating assembly is all very similar to the road car. Probably the biggest difference most people notice when they look at the engine package in this car is just how low it sits in the car compared to the road car. When you walk up to it, the top of the valve covers are about at your kneecap, which is pretty incredible. And a lot of that comes from the oiling system. These cars have a very short oil pan. The counterweights on the crank are really just a few millimeters above the floor of the car. When you get into the rest of the drivetrain layout that really enables them to be this low is these engines in these cars don't have a traditional flywheel. So the drive shaft is actually just bolted straight to the back of the crank, and it is solid. There's no U-joints or anything. It's a solid carbon drive shaft, and it runs all the way to the back seat area. These cars use a X-Track sequential race car transmission in the back. And so none of those parts are shared with the road car. Everything in a normal road car you would expect to be on the engine. So the starter, the clutch, the flywheel, all of that is actually in the back of the car on the front of the gearbox. And so when you look at the back of these engines, you really just have blank engine with a drive shaft bolted directly to the crank snout, and everything else is in the back. A lot of the surfaces, like when you look at the roof and the A-pillars and the windows and the windshield, a lot of that is the original Mustang shape. But really, all the exterior bodywork beyond that is pretty substantially modified from the factory shapes. Once all the bodywork is off of it, the original Mustang chassis basically starts at the base of the windshield, and it is the whole interior and cockpit of the car, and it really just ends at about the rear axle center line. And all the structure from the firewall forward and behind the rear wheels is fabricated. So it really shares nothing in those areas with the factory car. You know, the production Mustang and this car obviously share a lot of the same DNA, but all the suspension geometry, the uprights, the brake package is all really custom for the GT3 car. Almost none of it is shared with the road car. So these cars have a pretty traditional double wishbone suspension layout, which, you know, if you look at the GTD road car, which is their pinnacle street car, it actually has a more advanced rear suspension than the race car does. It's got, you know, active ride height and rocker arm suspension in the rear. These race cars have a very simple suspension layout. It's highly refined, but it's special just for the GT3 car. The Mustang GT3 is built by Multimatic. So us as a race team, we receive the car. It looks very much like this. And so most of our engineering challenges center around, the operation of the team, setting it up for each racetrack, and then sort of the ongoing development to get all the speed we can out of it on these race weekends. It sounds strange, but we actually pay very little attention to the actual horsepower number as a race team. So we're very fortunate that Ford Racing handles all of the engine build for all these cars. The way this car is raced globally in all these different race series, they actually have all different kinds of power levels. And so in this configuration, most GT3 cars, and especially all the cars in this paddock, they all make 550 horsepower approximately. And that's all very tightly regulated by the series. And so like when we took delivery of this car, we actually get a big suitcase with it that has 20 different engine restrictors for the throttle bodies. And depending on what series you run in, you put different sized ones in to make the right amount of power. And so the final power levels based on airflow and everything else, those are all developed by Ford Racing. And so for us as a team, I actually couldn't tell you whether this weekend we're making 520 horsepower or 550 horsepower. It's kind of out of our hands. In this type of racing, you know, one of the areas that we pay extraordinary attention to is the tire and the management of the tire over the life of the stint in the car. So in GTD, every car runs a Michelin Pilot Sport H1 dry tire, which are same dimensions for every car, whether they're front engine, rear engine, mid-engine. In our case, those tires are mounted on an American Racing wheel, which is a forged aluminum one-piece wheel. And these are actually special for the Mustang GT3. They're very similar to some of their road car wheels, but on the GT3 car, it's a center lock wheel nut, which is actually retained in the wheel at all times. So when we're doing pit stops, the nut stays with the wheel, comes on and off. And there's actually some really cool features on these wheels. They, aside from all the cooling stuff, they actually have integrated a little bit of a ridge around the edge that's really just for pit stops. It makes it easier for the crew guys to carry them one-handed when they're running around the car. And some of that stuff is really pretty awesome. Kind of fits into the quality of life with the development of the car that doesn't necessarily change the lap time, but it really makes it easier in an endurance racing scenario to execute a fast pit stop or change parts quickly. You know, these cars, the way they arrive to us, they're already extremely complicated. Tons of electronics, a couple of different data logging systems, electronic clutch, all these things that are really quite sophisticated. When we come racing in IMSA, there's actually an entire separate electronics package that gets placed in the car on top of all that. And that really gives IMSA the ability to directly monitor all the things that affect all these different cars' performance so they can produce a great on-track product. And so they actually have their own, IMSA has their own telemetry system in the car. And so they can monitor almost everything we're doing live during the race. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But new for this season in this class, there's a new system that all of our power regulation across all the different makes and models is actually monitored through torque sensing drive shafts. Each axle in this car and in every other car in this class, they all share the same torque sensor that is actually just mounted on the center of the axle, and it measures how much the axle is being twisted. And through that, they are directly measuring the amount of power every car in this field makes at the ground. And so when you kind of think a little bit about that, it takes out of the equation the engine tuning, how dirty your air filter is, how much drivetrain loss there is in the gearbox. It's basically being measured right before it reaches the wheel and tire. And so it's actually created for us a lot of new things we have to think about and learn about as we run this car. Yeah, so for this weekend, this is a 10-hour race, Petite Le Mans, 10 hours. And for this length of race, we have 3 drivers. For us, it's really pretty cool. Like, there's a lot you can look at in GTD that there's a certain market that people consider a sports car. And a lot of people would say that a Mustang is a muscle car, not really a sports car. And it has a certain track presence that I think is really unique. A lot of the high-end sports cars, to me, the designs have all kind of condensed around a pretty similar looking wedge shape. And honestly, with all the racing liveries on them, sometimes it's kind of hard to even tell them apart. There's no mistaking the Mustang compared to a lot of the other makes and models that we race against. Between the sound it makes and the track presence it has, it's pretty cool to see it go by. In GTD, you really get 3 different drivetrain layouts, which is mid-engine rear-wheel drive. We have the Porsches with the rear-engine rear-wheel drive, and in this case, obviously a front-engine car. This car actually is a lot closer to those mid-engine cars than you would think. Even though this is a front-engine car, when we're doing our setup with ballast in the car for fuel weight and driver weight, this car is actually heavier on the rear axle than the front, even though it's a front-engine car. And so that really tells you a lot about how much effort Ford and Multimatic went into placing all the heavy components in the car. You know, we came from, prior to the Mustang, we came from a mid-engine platform in the Acura NSX. And, you know, we looked at where we might go after our long run with Honda and Acura. One thing we really focused on was the idea that we wanted to get into a front engine car. And the reason for that is every car in GTD uses a spec Michelin tire. And so the front tire and the rear tire that every car in this class runs is the same size, same dimensions, same compounds. And so when you think about the way these cars generate lap time, there's a pretty big difference in the ability to use the spec tire depending on the weight distribution on the car and things like that. So for us, the Mustang layout, being a front engine car, it's a really well-balanced car. All the weight is condensed inside of the front and rear axle. You know, visually when you see these cars racing against each other, the Mustang looks like a big car, and when the bodywork is off of it, this is actually a very compact car, and there's not a whole lot outside of the axles. So, you know, we found it to be very gentle on the tires, and if you look at the specs in every car racing here, this car is currently one of the lightest cars in the field, even though visually you'd say it's one of the biggest cars here. For us, I'd say the biggest areas of development this year for the car have been in the dampers, suspension geometry, and more recently we've been working on the differential a bit more. Obviously, all those things are related. We're constantly changing springs and sway bars and a lot of that kind of traditional stuff, but for development that we're really learning more, I'd say in the suspension geometry and the differential have kind of been the most powerful things recently. The margins in this type of racing are so small that it's kind of hard to describe to like a lay person that these really small changes, we might gain a half second. And in this field, that could be the difference between 18th and 10th or 10th and 5th. They're really big jumps for small areas of development. And so we're hyper focused on finding some of those extra gains right now. I got my start in this business as a fabricator and a race mechanic. And so I've built a lot of race cars, and it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but this car is an absolute treat to work on. I'm certainly past the point of working on it myself now, but you know, for the mechanics, these cars, modern GT3 cars, and especially the Mustang GT3 are just incredibly modular. We can strip every body panel off this car in about 3 or 4 minutes, and that includes front end, splitter, diffuser, rear bumper, doors, you name it. So the accessibility to work on it is awesome. And you know, there's a lot of really thoughtful, small touches that Multimatic put into the car when they built it. It's funny when outsiders find out that these cars are built by the factory and that as race teams, we receive a car that's already a race car. In their minds, it's like, well, then what do you even do as a race team? And the reality with these cars is that there are so many things that are adjustable on them, and we have a lot of freedom in how we set the car up. Daytona for sure is one of the extreme ends of the spectrum where you're really focused on a compliant car because it needs to go very fast through the bus stop, which is on the back straight. And then you're also really, really focused on the attitude of the car at speed for drag. Because you spend so much time at Daytona at full throttle. And so at a track like Daytona, we may actually run the car very soft and spend a lot of time manipulating the bump stops and the packer gaps to, you know, dictate its attitude when it's going 150 miles an hour, and be less focused on some of the small bump compliance and things. I guess to give you a good range, the softest spring we've ever run on this car is about 500 pounds. And I'd say the stiffest spring that you would see on any GT3 car could be 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. Like, there's a huge range of ways to make cars like this work. The types of things that we are tweaking on constantly, they run the whole spectrum. Even though this car is a factory-built race car, we change the shock valving, the valves in the shocks regularly. We're constantly changing suspension geometry in very small ways. You know, these cars are homologated with a very small window, but within that small window, there's actually quite a bit of adjustment you can do. So almost any suspension alignment parameter you can think of is adjustable. It's kind of a funny question to think, like, what would I ask for? It's sort of like asking, what do you need to run a race team better? The answer is always more money. From a technical standpoint, the easiest thing to ask for is I want more downforce. That's really tightly controlled when the car gets homologated and the rules get frozen for the car. But when we're out racing against some of the other cars in the field, it feels like an area that's what I want, is just a little bit more downforce. And so I'm optimistic that there's some more of that coming in the future in the next revision of the car. You know, for our team, what we're racing in IMSA and GTD is always going to be a long-term project. You know, our previous platform we were with for, I think, 6 years at least. And for us, our new relationship with Ford is one that's also going to be long-term. And so we're successful when we build on the knowledge we gain each year. And so with a new car, this has been one of the kind of steepest learning curves for our team to extract all the performance we can out of the car. When I look ahead to next year and the year after, the thing I'm probably most excited about is having gotten over the learning all the initial stuff this year and being able to start in 2026 with all this book of knowledge that we've generated. So of course, anytime you ask in racing, like, yeah, we want to be up front and winning every race next year. IMSA keeps the competition level in GTD so tight that nobody can expect to win every race. So for us, we want to be a front runner next year. We want to be winning races, and really long-term goal when you look out 2 to 3 years is we want to be a championship contender in GTD, and we'll see where that takes us.
Guess what, motherfucker? We're bringing the Burnyard back to SEMA.
That's right, everybody was saying, y'all not coming back, we coming.
Listen, we're talking new build reveals, giveaways, athlete signings, and a whole lot of burnouts.
We probably shouldn't be letting the building.
That's why they keep us out front. SEMA 2025, we're bringing the shit back, baby.